Are you unsatisfied with your current computer? Maybe it doesn't have the horsepower to do what you want it to do, or it's not fast enough. Maybe the best solution to both of these and many more problems is to build your own PC. If you're looking for a mid-range machine that checks most of the boxes while still maintaining a relatively low price, this is the guide for you. Hey, what's up guys? It's Wired here, and this is the Orion, a mid-range machine built for gaming, video editing, and overall use. I configured this PC for my personal needs, so by no means is this going to exactly fit your preferences. That being said, this should be a pretty good baseline for anyone to jump off of and customize. I built this for some average gaming, video and photo editing, as videography and photography are fairly large interests of mine, and overall use for things like school and such. If you're wondering, the games I play right now are PlanetSide 2, Warframe, and Rocket League at times. The only reason my collection is so small is that my laptop, which was my main PC prior to this, couldn't run any more demanding games at a playable frame rate. As such, most of the parts here are optimized for these games, as well as having enough capability to play AAA titles when I end up getting them. Saying that, you'll have to pick different parts for different games. If your budget can't quite fit our exact specifications here, we also provide some tips for what you can slim down your cost on. So without further ado, let's take a look inside Orion. For the CPU, I picked the Intel Core i5-6600K. This is the high end of price to performance in the Skylake line, and it was $100 off retail price because of Black Friday sales. While our motherboard doesn't support overclocking, a quick upgrade later down the line will definitely see to that. However, if the majority of your use is playing games that aren't very CPU intensive, I would suggest an i3-6100.
Or the slightly older but cheaper AMD X4 860K, a quad-core but with older architecture, meaning it won't run quite as fast. Keep in mind, however, if you pick the AMD processors, you will need to get a different motherboard, with the FM2 Plus socket rather than the LGA 1151 socket.
Because we're using an unlocked K SKU CPU, we're going to want to get a CPU cooler as it doesn't come with a default one. We're using the Cooler Master Hyper 212 EVO, which is a very popular budget choice. It's also compatible both with Intel LGA 1151 and AMD's FM2 Plus sockets.
If you're using an AMD processor, this will also work, but the 860K comes default with a CPU cooler, so there's no need to worry.
Which brings us to the motherboard. I'll be using a Gigabyte H110M S2H LGA 1151 Micro ATX board. The combination of the Micro ATX board with the ATX case was to allow for upgradability, like many of the components in this build are. Keep in mind, this board comes with a few drawbacks like only one system fan header, so be wary of that when selecting a proper motherboard for your system.
Once again, if you're using AMD, you'll want to use an FM2 Plus motherboard. To choose that, just look for a motherboard that has the features that you want at your price point. Keep in mind that the most expensive motherboards aren't too much of an upgrade over the normally priced ones.
Next we have our choice of graphics. The card we're using here is the 3GB EVGA NVIDIA GTX 1060. This has really good performance for the price, and being in the newest Pascal line of GPUs, it's future-proof and also very power efficient. Keep in mind, getting the 3GB version actually loses some of the CUDA cores from the more popular 6GB version, but look ahead for a full review for more information about that.
Some good stand-in candidates are the AMD RX 480 or 470, and if you want to slim down on your budget, take a look at the GTX 1050 or 1050 Ti. I would also not recommend going back to the 950 or 750 Ti because the price to performance trade-off is really not worth it.
My choice of RAM was a 24001 8GB stick of Corsair's LPX DDR4 memory. We chose the single 8GB stick to allow for easy upgradability to 16GB later. However, a 2x4 kit would be fine if you don't plan on upgrading anytime soon. If you're using the Intel motherboard like we are, make sure the RAM is DDR4, but if you're going to use any AMD motherboards and CPUs, then you'll need to get DDR3 as AMD currently doesn't support the newer DDR4 yet. The power supply I chose was the EVGA B1 500W 80 Plus bronze. Due to the low power nature of both the Polaris and Pascal GPUs and the fact that we're only using one graphics card, means that the 500W power supply should be sufficient. This specific unit is also very reputable, which is definitely a plus. For storage, we chose a 1TB WD Blue HDD. This is a universally good choice, fitting any budget. I plan on adding a smaller low-capacity SSD later on when my whole upgrade fest eventually happens. For the case, we've got the NZXT S340. This is a fairly budget-friendly case, coming in at around $100 Canadian usually, but I got it on sale for around $75. It has a transparent side panel, which you should be careful with as it is plastic and can pick up scratches. Design-wise, I personally love the minimalistic monolith design, although some may see it as a bit bland. The lack of any 5.25-inch drive bays is definitely a downside, but overall it's a great enclosure. I definitely recommend buying this, although any case that fits your budget and motherboard size should work. Just make sure there's ample ventilation and cable management space. Some extra problems that I ran into while building this system. The case comes with 2 fans, and I'm adding a third one in the front for fresh air intake. Problem is, my motherboard only has one fan header. I got around this by using a 3-way splitter, which should work fine as long as your fans don't consume power over 0.25 amps. I also added a relatively cheap wireless card to the build, as I don't have any Ethernet wall ports in the room that this PC will live in. Now, let's get on to building.
Some tools you might want are a screwdriver and a magnetic screws tray. Also, make sure you're in a static-free environment and that you're grounded to a large piece of metal to prevent static buildup on your parts, which can kill your PC. Stay away from carpet.
First, you'll need to take out your motherboard and rest it on your motherboard box. This is a great anti-static place to build most of your system on. Locate your motherboard CPU socket and there should be a thin rod. Unclip that and a silver hold-down plate should pop up.
On AMD motherboards there is no hold-down plate, but the beige grid of holes should have moved a little bit.
Next, locate your CPU and take it out of the box. Look for a small triangle in one of the corners on your CPU and line it up with the small triangle on your motherboard socket. This can be seen on the silver hold-down plate on Intel motherboards.
Or in one of the corners on the AMD motherboard sockets.
With the hold-down lever up, simply place in your CPU, making sure that the triangles are lined up and have it sit snugly in the motherboard.
Be very gentle, especially with AMD, because the small pins on the bottom of the CPU are very fragile.
On Intel motherboards, a small black plate should pop off. Don't mind that, it's just to prevent damage to the pins on the inside. To finish CPU installation, simply pull down the lever and your CPU should be securely in place. Next, we're going to install the RAM. On your motherboard there should be 2 to 4 DIMM slots. The installation for this is rather easy. Simply pull the tabs on either end and make sure the notch in the slot matches up with the notch in the RAM sticks, and slide it in. If you have more slots on your motherboard than you have RAM sticks, consult your manual to determine which one to use. This won't differ at all between AMD and Intel socketed motherboards. Lastly, we need to install the Intel and AMD CPU coolers. Now, the Hyper 212 Evo has quite a complicated setup process, which we will detail in another video. If you're using the default Intel cooler that came with the locked CPU, continue on. Check the bottom of your cooler if there's a gray film. Don't touch it, that's the thermal paste. For Intel coolers, simply align them where the cable is the closest to the fan header labeled CPU fan. Then snap each corner into place in an X pattern by simply pushing down and then plug your cable in.
For AMD users, just align the metal bars with the ledges on either side. On the side that doesn't have the lever, slide it over the ledge. On the other side, slowly slide the clip over until it's securely in place and pull the lever down.
Plug your CPU cable in on the CPU fan header and you're good to go. Now before I install this, we need to set up your case. Firstly, take your case out of its box. Take off both side panels by unscrewing the thumb screws and simply sliding them out. Lay the side panels somewhere safe where they won't get scratched, like back inside your case box, and remove the screws from within the bag inside. These are your motherboard, standoff, and PCI cover screws. Take out the hexagon-shaped standoff screws and install them on your case. Make sure that the holes line up and match the corresponding holes on the motherboard. You may have some screws left over, but that's okay. Keep those safe if you ever want to change your motherboard.
Next, grab your I/O shield. It should have come with your motherboard as a thin silver panel. Line it up with how your motherboard is going to be oriented in your case, and snap each corner into place.
You're almost ready to add in your motherboard. For ease of use, I'm just going to install the power supply first. Find the power supply mounting point. It should be either in the top or at the bottom. If it's at the bottom, it may allow you to choose whether it's facing down or up. If you plan on having your computer on carpet, then have the power supply face upwards into the case to prevent dust from the carpet clogging the power supply. Otherwise, choose whether you want it to take air from the outside to cool down or exhaust the air from the inside to cool itself. Top-mounted power supplies mostly only allow it facing into the case. Now take some of the included hex-tipped Phillips screws and screw them into the back, securing the power supply in place. Next, we should route some of the cables before motherboard installation. Look for a larger brick-type power connector. This should be your 20+4 pin connector. Drag this through a hole in the back of your case, then locate approximately where it should be on your motherboard. From the back of your case, find a hole closest to that location. Run the 20+4 pin connector through that hole.
Next, look for a 4 or 8 pin connector on your motherboard. Now repeating what you did for the 24 pin, do the same thing but with a 4+4 pin connector. Make sure you don't take the 6+2 pin by mistake, because that's for the GPU. Route the 4x4 pin to the back of the case to a hole near where it should go on the motherboard.
Now, near the front of your case there should be a bunch of small cables. Route those from the back to the hole on the lower side of your motherboard. You've done some basic cable management. Now we can install the motherboard. Slowly lower the motherboard at a slight angle with the I/O pointing down towards the I/O shield. Lower it in place and make sure that the standoffs are all in the right location. If the holes on your motherboard line up with the screw threads on your case, you're good. Go ahead and screw in all of the motherboard screws. Now plug in your previously routed 24-pin and 8-pin cable. Find the front I/O, USB and HD audio plug into the headers that have the missing pins where the holes blocked off on the cable. You're almost done. Now just look in your motherboard manual for what configuration you need to plug in your power LED, reset, and hard disk LED cables into. For the power and reset switch, the positive and negative cables don't matter, but for the LEDs, make sure that they match up with what's in your motherboard manual. You're almost done with your computer.
Now is the most important part, the GPU. Look for the long PCIe 16X slot and pull the tab near the end, backwards. Then look for a 6+2 pin connector. Route that to where you just found the PCI slot. Now simply remove the back covers by either unscrewing it or snapping off the dualist panels. Slowly insert your GPU until it snaps into place and plug in your 6+2 pin into your GPU.
Now all you're missing is your hard drive. Find a slot in your hard drive cage and slip in the hard drive. Simply screw it into place, or if you have toolless installation on your case, twist it. Next, find one of the included SATA data cables and plug it in to your motherboard. Plug the other end into your hard drive. In the mess of power supply cables, there should be one that looks similar to the SATA data cable, but wider. Plug the tip of that cable into the hard drive and you're good to go. If you want, plug in any fan cables that came with your case into the system fan header. Now, you're done. Close up both side panels and plug it in. Make sure to plug in the video cable on the output to the GPU, not the motherboard, and flick on your power supply, and then power on your system. You're officially done. Congratulations, you just built your very first and very own custom computer. Have fun. If you're ready to enter PC gaming, give this video a like. Prefer consoles? Feel free to dislike. And if you have any thoughts or questions about building your PC, leave it in the comments. What are your PC specs? Let us know. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time, where hopefully we'll be benchmarking this machine. Wired out.